Hello everyone, this is Mr. Strahota. It is Monday, April 6th, and I'm going to be giving you the screen recording on Unit 5, Lesson Number 2. And this will be the last set of notes for you prior to your spring break, which starts this Thursday and goes through next week, Tuesday. So I will not be assigning any more work after today. You will have until Wednesday to get the guided notes page done from this lesson, which the PowerPoint slides are posted on Classroom, and then I will be posting this screen recording to also help you with the guided notes as well. So, lesson number 2 is on the presidency of Thomas Jefferson, who was our third president of the United States, who came after George Washington and John Adams. So, Thomas Jefferson was elected in the election of 1800. And as you can see, he got 53% of the votes and 73 electoral votes. And John Adams, who was our second president, got 47% of the total votes or 65 electoral votes. So it was very close, but Jefferson does defeat John Adams, so Adams will not get a second term as president. And Jefferson, as mentioned in a previous lesson, is a Democratic Republican, so they take power then in the White House. And this is the first peaceful transition of parties, so we have a transition of two different parties going from John Adams to Thomas Jefferson. George Washington, our first president, and John Adams, our second president, were the same political party. So, as John Adams was a Federalist as well as George Washington, and now we're switching to Thomas Jefferson, who, as you can see down here, is a Democratic Republican. Jefferson's inaugural, and again, an inaugural is when you get signed, you actually get to become the president of the United States in today. So, for example, this coming November in 2020, we will have another presidential election. If President Trump were to be defeated by another candidate, they would not officially be inaugurated until January. So President Trump, hypothetically, if he were to lose, he would still be president until January. So an inaugural is just when the individual actually becomes president. So Thomas Jefferson is the first president inaugurated in Washington, D.C., and he outlines his essential principles of a more limited government. So he doesn't want as much involvement in the government. So again, Thomas Jefferson was an anti-federalist, meaning he wanted less control from the government, whereas individuals like Alexander Hamilton were federalists and they wanted more government involvement to help people. So Jeffersonian democracy, so what his viewpoints on politics is he refers to this view of an agrarian America made up of small farmers and small government. Agrarian means utilizing the land, so like farming. So he wants less involvement. He wants the people to have more control over themselves as well as how they can make their own money. So he wants less involvement from the government, and he feels people can handle these responsibilities on their own. Some of Thomas Jefferson's early accomplishments: he allows the Alien and Sedition Acts to expire. We talked about that in a previous lesson. The Alien Acts were if somebody were to be threatening the government, they could be sent out of the country. And Thomas Jefferson did not agree with these acts, so he wanted to get rid of them. And the Sedition Acts were if anybody was found talking badly about the government, they could be imprisoned. Jefferson did not like these acts, so he let them expire. He also cuts all internal taxes. Internal meaning inside, external meaning outside. So internal, he didn't like the idea of federal taxes, so he cuts those, doesn't think they're going to help people out. And then he also uses tariffs and sales of Western land to reduce the national debt. So tariffs are taxes put on trades, and he was also selling some land in western parts of the United States to help pay for some of the national debt. Then we have what are called the Barbary Wars. Barbary pirates from North Africa were attacking U.S. ships and demanding tributes. Tributes meaning money to be able to transport from one location to another. Well, Thomas Jefferson says, you know what? Nope, I'm going to send a ship, the USS Constitution, and he orders a blockade. So Jefferson is not backing down to these pirates, and he is refusing to pay any type of tribute or tax to these pirates. The pirates do agree to this, and then they sign a treaty which ends all tribute payments. So this is a big deal at this time period because this proved that the United States was not going to be pushed around by other people around the world. So this is a big turning point for America, and other countries around the world took notice and said, okay, the United States is not going to let us push them around anymore. So this is a big deal and a really important thing that Thomas Jefferson did during this time period. Marbury versus Madison. This was one of the most important Supreme Court cases ever in our history. What happened very quickly is Jefferson had James Madison refuse to give a commission to one of John Adams' midnight judges. So what this was really quickly to give you an example, is Thomas Jefferson defeated John Adams, as I just mentioned, in the presidential election of 1800. So before Jefferson took office, John Adams did some what we would consider some sneaky things. And what he did was he utilized Congress to pass the Judiciary Act of 1801, which created new courts, added judges, and gave the president more control over the appointments of judges. So basically what happened was before John Adams was no longer president, he put in a lot of different rules and laws to kind of try to bother Thomas Jefferson. Well, this was found to be not appropriate by John Adams. So this issue actually goes to the Supreme Court. And what this establishes is the concept of judiciary review, meaning that the Supreme Court can look at laws that are passed by the president or Congress, and they can decide if the laws are constitutional or not, which is what the role of our Supreme Court is today. So this is crucial because it set precedent for this concept of judicial review. And the courts then may decide if a law is constitutional or not. And of course, that's what our Supreme Court still does today. So way back in 1803, during the Marbury versus Madison case, this extremely important Supreme Court ruling came out and is still important to us today, even in 2020. The Louisiana Territory. So we are now getting to the part of the Louisiana Purchase, which was very crucial for our expansion in the United States. This area, which extended from Louisiana, of course, but also up through Central America, including like Oklahoma, and then up into the northern part of the United States today, which is like North Dakota, South Dakota. This was originally owned by France, and they were at war with England. So, at first, Thomas Jefferson just wanted to control the New Orleans port, which was where the Mississippi flows into the Gulf of Mexico. However, Thomas Jefferson discovered that France was willing to sell all of this territory, which he was like, whoa, that's way too good of a deal to pass up. So the Haitian Revolution makes this territory less valuable to France, so France doesn't feel that they're able to control this area anymore because they're having revolutions somewhere else. So Jefferson is able to purchase all of this, and this is extremely important to, again, like I mentioned, our westward expansion. Jefferson's not quite sure if it's constitutional or not to buy all of this land. However, he's going to purchase it anyway, and he uses his treaty-making power to make this happen. And he will purchase all of this land for $15 million, and this doubles the size of the United States. Now, $15 million was a lot back then, but when you break it down to how much land Thomas Jefferson actually got, this was still a fantastic deal for the United States. And this was ratified by the Senate in 1803, and now the United States has doubled in size by purchasing this area from Louisiana all the way up through North Dakota. The Lewis and Clark expedition, I'm sure all of us have at least heard of who Lewis and Clark are. They are exploring to find a Northwest Passage up in the northwest part of the United States. They will take Sacagawea as a guide, and I'm sure all of us have heard about her as well. And they will reach the Pacific in November of 1805, the Pacific Ocean over up where Washington State is today. So if you're familiar where like Seattle is today, that's roughly the region they ended up in. And this opens the way to settlement and claim on the Oregon Territory. So again, this further westward expansion for the United States is taking place, not only with the Louisiana Purchase, but also with Lewis and Clark and Sacagawea moving west. The Embargo Act of 1807, France and England are at war, which again in history they seem to be a lot. And this traps U.S. in the middle. And the United States again didn't want to get involved in all of this. So U.S. ships and sailors are being harassed by both because the United States is neutral. They're not taking a side on either, so they're getting harassed by both sides. Well, the Embargo Act of 1807 blocks trade against both countries, and this will actually only hurt the U.S. merchants. So Thomas Jefferson thought this was a good idea to kind of cut off trade between France and England. However, this really only hurt the United States traders. So what was Jefferson's legacy to wrap up? So Jefferson handpicked successor James Madison to become the next president. And so again, James Madison will be our fourth president. Jefferson will renew his friendship with friend and political rival John Adams, which is again who Thomas Jefferson defeated in the election of 1800. And ironically, both will die on July 4th, 1826, the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And of course, another main part of Jefferson's legacy is the purchase of Louisiana Purchase, which again was crucial in westward expansion for the United States. So to conclude, this is a visual of where this westward expansion looked and how they went up into the Northwest Passage over here by Oregon and Washington State. And how many modern day states did the Corps of Discovery pass through? So the Corps of Discovery was Lewis and Clark. So you can just kind of count that on your own. About how many miles do you think their expedition was? Again, this is something you can just estimate on your own. And then lastly, why do you think their trip was not a simple straight line to the west? And if you're familiar with the geography of the United States at all, if we look on the map here, it looks a bit mountain. Looks like a pretty large mountain range here, which of course is the Rocky Mountains, which extend all the way through here. So that's probably why their trip was not very simple through the west. So hopefully you enjoyed the lesson and got some information out of that, as we're starting to move west now in the United States, and we're no longer just the 13 states on the East Coast, but we're now moving west as well. So make sure you're getting that guided notes lesson 2-page done and submitted by Wednesday, and then enjoy your spring break. I know it feels a little different this year, but you can continue to work on things over spring break if you would like, but I'm not going to assign anything else until next week, Wednesday. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask, and have a great rest of your day.